Here's to hoping that the Empire Dwarf Snurgle DLC isn't as cut down or expensive as the current DLC, given the backlash. I have my own thoughts about that I'm going to share at a later date once I can actually show you the DLC. But anyway, for today we're going to dive straight into something that actually makes me very happy, which is Empire versus Lizardmen. This is a replay from a couple of weeks ago, Friday Night Fights tournament. This is Lamb Sauce King versus Anti-Kaiju, and of course it is Empire versus Lizardmen with Balthazar Gelt leading the way. We've got a couple of grenade launcher outriders up front, already getting screened out by some chameleons, 5 of them on the opposite side. We've got swordsmen as a front line, second line of huntsmen, silver bullets, which confusingly enough have golden guns, and we've got some spearmen and Empire Knights protecting the flank there and here. 4 Empire Knights in total. For Lizardmen, we already saw those chameleons getting involved. Got 5 skink cohort as well. Slan Mage of Life with double bow stegodon. Pretty interesting. And these guys are low-key pretty good. Counter-sniping artillery, good single target damage, poison, all that jazz. It is a unit that exists. A lot of people don't remember that Lizardmen even have artillery, because they're not that great in Warhammer 3, Solar Engines especially. Not what they were in Warhammer 2. Makes me a bit sad. But anyway, got some Cold One Spear Riders out on the flanks protecting, and the Umbral Tide Salamanders in the back. So let's get things started. Balthazar going to come forward and try and MLG dodge some of the Chameleon Skink Fire, although he is quite squishy, and even though the Chameleons, they're pretty accurate, it doesn't take a lot to do a lot of damage to Balthazar, so he's going to have to peel out and away immediately. Huntsmen, of course, firing as they advance. Whoops. As I accidentally paused the game here. Yeah, they can fire while moving, so they'll be able to keep up the range pressure as they get into space here. Obviously, state troops are superior to skinks in pretty much every way. They do, of course, get poisoned, which is going to reduce their weapon strength, but they'll still be able to outclass the skinks, no problem, in melee combat. As the huntsmen also start to saturate in. Stegodons, even though they have a lot of armor, 110 armor is definitely very solid, still are going to take pretty significant damage from those huntsmen. So yeah, the Lizardman player here definitely needs to try and avoid taking the damage on the bow steg if he can. There's no really, I mean, if you're trying to use the artillery portion of it, you might as well just pull it back and start shooting into the huntsmen themselves to try and kind of counter snipe them. But grenade outriders getting some nice shots into the chameleons, despite their missile resistance, but a brutal counterfire from the Umbral Tide basically just destroys the unit in one shot, more or less. You see a regrowth on this Stegodon as well to heal it back up. The silver bullets have yet to really get involved. They're having some line of sight and range issues, but it does look like they're in hot pursuit of the Stegodon, going to continue to pressure. I mean, the bow stegs, it's all good and all to have the artillery piece, but it does mean that you're almost incentivized to keep your Stegodons out of the fight, which is not great. I mean, it makes more sense for the Bastillodons, like the Solar Engines, even though Solar Engines' accuracy and damage is just not what it used to be, even though that blinded debuff can be very good. See a nice final transmutation of the backline on those Umbral Tide and the Stegodon. We're going to see Shield of the Old Ones try and counteract a bit of that damage, and probably some healing as well, perhaps. No, not quite, but the Umbral Tide definitely raining in some long-range death on some of these swordsmen and helping the skinks actually trade out this line more or less evenly. Skinks also can have the speed to pursue huntsmen if they're able to beat the swordsmen, so it's pretty important for them to do so. However, the Empire Cavalry is starting to move in on the flanks here, and the chameleons are having to run for their lives. The Cold One Spear Riders being a little bit misplayed here. They were in a nice defensive position and then kind of overextending into the front line. That then allows the Empire Knights to come in and collapse this entire backline area. So Umbral Tide now at severe risk. I mean, obviously the Empire Knights aren't going to do a lot to the bow stegodons, but they can at least keep them pinned down and allow these missile units to try and come forward. Although the Skink, Pressure, and the Cold One Spear Riders are coming through and just destroying a lot of these missile units, so maybe I'm wrong, and maybe this kind of cavalry counterattack was the right call, rather than trying to protect the relatively few units in the back line, counter pressure into much greater value of huntsmen and gunners, be able to shut them all down pretty much at the same time, which is quite impressive. Only one unit still remains unrouted. So the Empire Knights, of course, responding to that, going to come recollapse these Chameleon Skinks and try and get through to the Cold One Spear Riders, which had an impressive run, but I am a little bit worried they're going to start to run out of steam as their numbers get dragged down by those Spearmen, as these Huntsmen and other units start to come back from route in areas where they can't really pursue. Will be problematic for them, to say the least. But the Empire Knights that compromised the Lizard's backline also pay a severe price as the Slon comes through, and they realize they're fighting two Stegodons, which is just not ideal at all. Empire Knights are going to get crushed there, and they do come back from route relatively shortly, but at the very least, these other two can come out, smash up the rest of the Chameleon Skinks, or even move in and still continue to bog down those Stegodons. Maybe try and bypass them and get these Chameleon Skinks that are close by, at least just finish them off. But yeah, the Empire missile units, despite the Lizard cavalry attack, do manage to mostly get back online intact here with quite a few unit models, which of course is going to be quite dangerous for these Stegodons. So Empire Knights just charging past the big monsters here, getting through to the Skinks, trying to just decisively finish them off, of course. And the Huntsmen also now with a pretty good firing position set. Skinks are trying to move through, but we've got some Spearmen also, plenty of bodies to try and block the Skinks and protect, beat them back. So looking pretty good for the Empire right now, despite the balance power being relatively even. A lot of that comes from the Slon being so healthy. And, you know, the Stegodons certainly are dangerous, but Balthazar getting a little Staff of Volans there. Now going for a big Overcast Final Transmutation, along with the missile units here, should be enough to finish off the Stegodons. One of them just about heal capped anyway from the Life Slon. So it's not like they can receive much more healing, at least that one can't. Slon probably has a decent amount to try and heal this other one still, but the rest of the army being so decimated is definitely a big problem at this point. Not really any support units to help out these big monsters, and with Empire having enough missiles to win the day, it's looking pretty grim for Lizardmen. Let's go ahead and just fast forward through this late game cleanup as the Huntsmen continue to fire in. Empire Knights just making sure units can't come back from route. Same thing with these Swordsmen against those Skinks there. We do get a little bit of an attack from Cold One Spear Riders, but it is quickly repelled. Stegodon also comes forward, and arguably, you know, the Bowsteg's great, but arguably you should just be using the Stegodons in melee to try and rush your opponent here. And so, you know, taking the Feral Stegodons, which are significantly cheaper, probably is going to work out better. It just allows you to take more cavalry, and that really is the key to this matchup, in my opinion. From years of experience playing in it, is that Lizard Cavalry trades very cost-effectively with Empire Cavalry. Even the lower-tier Cold One Riders that don't have an anti-large bonus will trade just fine with Empire Cavalry. So in this instance, Lamb Sauce King was able to get quite a bit of value on these Empire Knights and use them fairly effectively because although the Cold One Spear Riders also did a pretty good job, they weren't used to directly counter the Empire Knights, which is really their role here. And then with the rest, you know, you have Skinks supported by monsters. You can crush through the Empire front line relatively quickly. Maybe you mix in a few Saurus. It is a pretty heavy investment on Chameleons as well that had a hard time being protected from so much Empire mobility. So that's really why the Empire Knights did such a great job here. Huntsmen, of course, are always going to be quite dangerous, but you can definitely pressure them away if you can get a quick break on that light Empire front line, which here, the Empire State Troops, they do an okay job. They're mostly just here for support. One Spearman manages to get some pretty good value back. But, yeah, it's definitely an interesting one. Definitely an interesting matchup as well. Yeah, personally, the Bowstegs, there's some use cases for them. My personal favorite is to destroy Skaven artillery, because Skaven often, at least historically, would take, you know, like Warp Lightning cannons in that matchup. But Bowsteg in general against the Empire artillery pieces tend to be quite a bit smaller and not as easily counterable. So yeah, unfortunately, solar engines are just really not where it's at right now. Even though this blinded debuff is quite nice, you really don't see them much at all. Bowstegodon is 1500, so it is a reasonable amount more than you know, just the basic 1100 or even 1050 Feral Stegodons. So, yeah, I mean, for an extra 450 points, you get 5 leadership, which is decent. An extra 200 HP. It gets the Howdah with the bow Stegodon attack. But personally, I think it's better to just save that value and take more cavalry. So these 850 Cold One Riders will trade just fine into Empire Knights and be able to come out on top pretty decisively. So especially like a Stegodon supporting these guys in a cavalry fight. Not that it's really fast enough to do so super effectively, but you know what I mean. Or crushing through that infantry front line, like I said. I think this is going to be a better way to go rather than... And maybe you can still mix in a Cold One Spear Rider or two if you really want to emphasize the cavalry portion. But generally, I would say something like this would probably serve you a little bit better, and you just want to play aggressively and rush into the Empire. So let me know your guys' thoughts in the comments down below, though. Hopefully you enjoyed this. If you do like this sort of content, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification button. Every time I upload a new video, you'll be notified. Thanks again. We'll see you next time.